Hey everybody, this is Nate Gustafson, Brookdale Hospice Volunteer Coordinator in Denver, Colorado. I'm so glad to be able to share this time with you today. I just wanted to take a moment for all of you that are watching this as potential volunteers with our hospice program, that this is one of our required training modules on Alzheimer's disease, and I just wanted to walk through some of the key highlights of the material and introduce it to you. So here we go. Many of you maybe have heard the joke of Alzheimer's disease being old-timers disease, or as soon as you have one momentary lapse of memory, you may think that, oh, I must have Alzheimer's disease because I forgot where my keys were, or I forgot where I parked my car, or I, left the milk carton out on the countertop. Well, if that's the case, then I've been struggling with Alzheimer's disease most of my life because I tend to forget things, I tend to misplace things, I tend to lose things all the time. So maybe that's more absent-mindedness than some sort of neurological disease. But it's important to realize that the vast majority of the folks that we take care of in hospice, especially as they age, as they get upwards of 80, 85, 90, 95, most of our folks, well over 50% of our folks, have some level of cognitive difficulties, whether that's just taking a little bit longer to recall certain information, whether that's true Alzheimer's disease, or maybe it's another type of dementia disease, which we'll touch on briefly as well. So with this presentation, I just hope it gives you a brief overview. I will be providing lots of other information to you in your volunteer journey to help you connect with and spend quality time with our folks who are dealing with this terrible disease called Alzheimer's disease. The diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease has been around for a little over 100 years. And basically, it's a brain disease. It's a disorder of the brain, and it falls under a larger category of dementia. So when you think of dementia, there are multiple different diseases that fall underneath that category. Alzheimer's is just one of those diseases. Alzheimer's is the most prevalent, oftentimes appearing in older age. And it's basically a reversal as the inner workings of our brain begin to unravel, unwind, and there become larger sections in our brain that are literally just dead. They're literally holes where the tissue, the neurons, the transmitters have eroded away, and there's no longer any ability to connect from one section of the brain to another. So it's important to realize that a person who has this terrible disease can still live a very enjoyable and meaningful existence. It just takes a team of community, of loved ones, of family, of volunteers, of staff, of neighbors, everyone coming together to best support this person and understand where they're at in their journey, helping them to make the best of each and every day that they have. We want to make sure that every person is treated with dignity, especially as they deal with so many losses that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. So as a person grows older, again, we all slow down. Our muscles change, our circulation changes, our memory may change a little bit. That's just due to things slowing down a bit. A 60-year-old can't outrace the fastest of NFL football players. But Alzheimer's is not normal. Alzheimer's is a disease, and it's not due to aging, or it's not due to just increased stress. It's significantly due to the disease going on in the brain, the loss of these cells, the plaques, the tangles, the neurons, the transmitters, all getting messed up with this disease. And it's important to realize there is not one specific cause for Alzheimer's. Some Alzheimer's can be traced genetically, it appears. Others have linked Alzheimer's to be almost like a diabetes of the brain disease. So what are the effects of Alzheimer's? Inside a normal adult brain, you can see this picture here on your screen. The brain obviously is the command center. It's the central nervous system, the central hub of all conscious and subconscious, unconscious, physical, mental, emotional interactions going on. And as plaques and tangles, those are the things that start to creep into the brain. As those things start to creep in, they choke off the communication lines. And as they choke off the communication lines, it's as if that part of the brain dies. And so, as you can see, back in 1980, especially in the 80s and 90s, as Alzheimer's underwent significant study and research, basically we can look at Alzheimer's as a backwards, super slow motion progression back to childhood. So even though a person may be 80 years old, at the end of their disease process with Alzheimer's, it's very common to see them very vegetative, unable to care for themselves, unable to communicate, unable to verbalize, unable to even get one sensical word out that makes any sense to what's going on in the current situation. So you can look at the stages. Stage 1 of Alzheimer's is where it's just starting to shut down. Things are just starting to be noticeable. It's not just one bad day or one forgetful moment. There's lapses in judgment, there's lapses in communication, and new experiences are no longer stored. The new experiences are no longer kept up here. That's why when we work with someone with Alzheimer's, it's so important to start in their past, start back in their journey, and move forward to the present, because it's oftentimes very frustrating for them to try and recall something from the present moment, like, what did you have for breakfast today? Oh, what did you think of the game yesterday? Or is your daughter going to visit today? Any of those questions may or may not trigger someone to have a reaction to what you're asking them. They may realize that they're forgetful. They may realize that they can't think of the right names or the words or remember a family member's name. And so we just want to be very cautious and always validate, always reassure, always give them lots of encouragement to continue on. Stage 2, the areas of the brain formed from ages 4 to 5 to age 12. So our language, what helps us make sense of the world, our ability to start having real concrete functioning, those begin to shut down. Just even the ability to move from one end of the house to the other, or make your way to the grocery store, the same grocery store someone may have visited for 50 years. And now, because of the plaques and the tangles and the things that are involved in the brain mechanisms, that person's no longer able to do that. And so oftentimes they really begin to lose the ability also to make sense of normal words, normal sounds, everyday sounds, sight, sound, smells, visualization. Even a change in going from carpet to hardwood floor or going from black to white tile can really throw a persons with Alzheimer's off and really give them a great deal of anxiousness. Stage 3 of Alzheimer's is really coming to the end, and some folks give Alzheimer's about 4 or 5 stages. This is an example of 3 stages, where basically a person is going back to their infancy. Oftentimes, Alzheimer's is not the direct complication that leads to a person's death. Oftentimes, literally, they forget to swallow. They forget to manipulate a fork and a spoon to eat with. They may fall. They may have multiple systems of their internal organs begin to shut down. And so Alzheimer's is not always the one cause, but it's what leads to these other causes of a person's death. So we want to concentrate on personal-centered care. Caring for Alzheimer's is obviously not easy. If you just ask anyone who has cared for a loved one at home or in an assisted living environment, working with an adult who is going through this backwards degeneration stage is very, very heartbreaking, very, very difficult. You have to just kind of throw out a few usual rules of social engagement to be able to engage with these people better. Most importantly, we want to meet them right where they are. We want to make sure that we are there with them in that moment, ensuring that they are safe, secure, loved, and cared for. So when we meet someone with Alzheimer's, we want to be personal. We want to find out about their life story, their likes, their dislikes. We don't want to worry about certain rules like, oh, I should never ask them how old they are, or never ask them about their career, or it's just everything's out in the open. We just invite them to share with us anything and everything about the person that would help us know how to take care of them better. we don't want to force anybody into anything, but we want to just carefully and presently invite them to share something, invite them to engage in an activity. We don't want to assume any of these things that will happen. We want to be careful with wandering. It's very typical in some of the earlier stages of Alzheimer's for a person to be disoriented. They're trying to find their way home. They're trying to find their loved one. And so they just wander. They're looking for their way. Oftentimes they're at a greater risk of elopement. That's why oftentimes they're placed in memory care units that are locked with secure entrances and exits. So we want to concentrate on how to speak their language. We don't want to be in a high, chaotic environment. If possible, we want to keep the background noise low. We want to be front and center in front of them. And I always say we want to go low and slow. One question with a lot of time to respond. One comment with a long pause to see if they respond. And we always want to make eye contact, reintroduce ourselves. Even if the person doesn't seem to get it or doesn't seem to respond, we still want to respond with dignity and respect for this person. And at the very end stages of Alzheimer's, it's very vegetative. It's a lot of sleeping. It's not very much interaction. They lose all control of their bowel and bladder. They are all the way down to maybe just 1 or 2 words of talking. Especially as they near hospice stage. This is where oftentimes we pick up and begin to work with someone is at the end stages. To be eligible for hospice under the Alzheimer's diagnosis, they have to basically be only saying 1 to 4 or 5 intelligible words in a conversation. They cannot be caring for their toileting needs. And they have to have recently been losing weight, which is evidence to that lack of understanding, that lack of ability to handle their eating and food nutrition. Daily cares for the folks in our assisted living and skilled nursing centers is very important to always figure out what's the best time of day for this person. That's something that you as a volunteer may want to incorporate into your visits. Is this person having a really hard time staying focused after lunch? Or at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock is oftentimes a really tough time for someone with Alzheimer's to be visiting. So we want to look for a time that they're most awake, alert, energized, and see if we can at all possible arrange our time to visit at that time. So again, this is just a summary of the key points of just understanding the basics of Alzheimer's. This is just barely scratching the surface. And if you'd like to find out more, I'd encourage you to Google validation therapy. You can see some YouTube videos. You can get some great books on Alzheimer's care. There's also a woman by the name of Teepa Snow, Teepa, Snow, like a snowy day. She has also written and trained extensively in Alzheimer's. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and I hope that this will encourage you to reach out and find out more about how to care for and to connect with people struggling with Alzheimer's disease.